you can follow along. Awesome day. I'm looking forward to it. Baptism. Got people dressed in white robes, which I guess is a precursor, because we're going to get ones one day anyway, I hope, anyway, one day. Our opening verse for this morning comes from the book of Romans, chapter 6 and verse 33. And it says the following: "Or do you not know that as many of us as were immersed or baptized or mikvahed into Messiah Yeshua were immersed into his death?" For a few moments this morning, I want to speak on the title and the topic for today: Baptism, the test of the covenant. Baptism, the test of the covenant. I know that you guys know the prayer here. If you know it at home, please pray with me. Abba, give us eyes to see, ears to hear, and hearts that are willing to obey. In the Master's name, amen. Amen. Okay. Now, obviously, you guys know, last couple of weeks, we've been talking about the fig tree, the figs, the summer, the spring figs. We're going to put that aside just for this week. We're going to get right back to it next week. It's really leading us right up to the whole Passover story. But obviously, since today is our baptism, I wanted to do a message about baptism, explaining it. Because over the years, and I think all of us can relate to this, all of us that are walking in the faith, there's what we learned in the beginning, and then there's what you learned later on. And obviously, later on, you understand things so much differently than you did in the beginning. I want to define a couple of terms that I know most of you guys know because you watch week after week or you hear week after week. But I'm going to use some terms that may be unfamiliar to some people, so I just want to define them so you know what we're talking about. You don't think we're talking some other language. You've already heard me say the word mikvah. The word baptize, which I think everybody's more familiar with. The word baptize, the word mikvah. And in the scripture version that we use, it actually uses the word immerse. They're all synonyms. They all mean the same thing. So if you hear me use one or the other, I'm talking about the same thing. You're going to hear me use the word Yah. You're going to hear me use the word Yahweh. You're going to hear me sometimes maybe use the word Lord or God or Elohim. They're all synonyms. Ones obviously are English words. The other ones have a more Hebraic meaning to them. And believe it or not, there really is a difference between the English and the Hebrew, but those are the generic terms that we are familiar with. So if you hear me say Yah, know that I'm talking about God. However, if you hear me say Messiah, which I will probably say a lot, or the term Yeshua, or the term Yahushua, or probably what most people are familiar with, the Christ, or the word Jesus, the Latin version of it, they're synonyms. We're referring to the individual who died on the cross and was dead 3 days and rose on the third. So if you hear me use those words, and why do we use those words? Because the other words are the actual, the true names. One is a modern Hebrew name, Yeshua, and the other is a more ancient Hebrew name, Yahushua. They mean something. So we try to use the proper names here so that we get used to hearing them, we get used to understanding what they mean and how they sound. Believe me, back in that day, if you could take a DeLorean and hit 85 miles an hour and all of a sudden zoom back in time to the first century, if you happened to be there on the shores and the fish were being multiplied and the bread is being multiplied and you started screaming out, "Jesus, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus," he would not turn around. There was no name like that back then. If you would have said Yahushua or Yeshua, he would have turned around and looked at you. So that's kind of why we do it. Why do we get baptized? I guess that's a good question. You can see the picture up there. It's a little baby getting baptized. I guess they really call it christening, but it's basically a baptism. Many of us, when we started off in this thing, we first heard about baptism, we would say, well, I was baptized as a child, or I was baptized, years ago as whatever. And the concept, the idea that I think most people have concerning baptism is that, well, I've been forgiven my sin and now I'm on my way to heaven. And this is my way of starting all over to get to heaven. Well, there's some truth in that, but it's not all true. This is not a trip to heaven. This is entering into covenant with Father and with the Son. Now, this is stuff that we probably weren't told way back when. We were just told you've been forgiven your sin, which is good, which is awesome, which is fabulous. But we really weren't told why. We weren't told what the whole story actually is. And what happens is, without the whole story, what happens is we come up with all sorts of other ideas and concepts and doctrines and fellowships and names and denominations, coming up with their version of the story rather than listening to and understanding the version that's actually written in the book that we hold in our hands. So yes, it is about our sins being forgiven. We're talking, of course, about the death of Messiah, the resurrection of Messiah, and our sins being forgiven. But this isn't just about being forgiven. This is about entering into covenant with Father. Now, that's not a word that is used a lot in the modern English vernacular, the word covenant. We would use the word contract, maybe an oath. You swear to something. A covenant is that, but it's more than just that. A covenant is an oath, it's a promise, it is something that is binding, that is made between two people, like marriage. Marriage is called a marriage covenant. It is two people binding themselves together and being united. Being, the word we use all the time is what? Echad. Being together, being one, being singular, being in unity, a single purpose. Well, that's a covenant. And a covenant is really a Middle Eastern thing. It's an Asian thing. That's where it originates. Ancient cultures knew the value of covenants. You made covenant with a neighbor next to you. You made covenant with a tribe next to you for protection. Even today, I think we might even use the word treaty. Countries make treaties with other countries, and we're binding together. And even in the UN Charter, under Article 5, if one of the UN nations gets attacked, what do all the other nations do? Or what are they supposed to do? They're supposed to come to their rescue. At least that's the way it's written. So that's sort of an earthly example of it. But it's much, much bigger than that, because the covenant that we're talking about is a covenant with Almighty God. We're talking about a covenant with the Son. That isn't what we refer to today as just the New Covenant, because people use that term. We use that all the time. We say New Testament or New Covenant. But we don't understand what's actually being done and or said. Because in all reality, it's not the New Covenant. You guys know the word. It is actually the renewed covenant. And I know we all say new, but we just got used to that. That's not what the Hebrew word means. It means renewed. Something has been renewed. Now, I hope that you guys watched Wednesday's Bible study, because it really was a precursor to this message to help you understand what a covenant is. And I spent some time talking about the covenant given in the Garden of Eden. The story of the covenant, Father keeps telling us it over and over and over so that we internalize it and we understand it. And then when the actual Son of the covenant comes, we can understand what the whole story is about. So without going into a whole review of Wednesday, suffice it to say, at least for this morning, there's 4 elements. There's a lot more than this, but there's 4 elements I want to talk about concerning a covenant, when you make an oath or a promise with someone. The first element is cutting. Something must be cut. Something must be bled. There must be the pouring out of blood. And an oath, a promise, is to be made. If you ever seen some of those old cowboy movies, I know I'm dating myself, but Clint Eastwood, I can't even remember the name of it, Jesse something or other. At the end of it, he makes a covenant with the Indian chief, 10 bears. And what do? They cut themselves on the hand, and then they put their hands together. That's a blood covenant. There must be the spilling of blood, the cutting of something, which unfortunately very often means the death of something. With a covenant, there is also a covenant meal. There is an eating that goes on. Eating is how we fellowship. It's how we share something with your family. Hopefully at some point in the week, if not every night of the week, at least a couple of nights of the week, you sit down with your family and you all sit to a meal so that you all catch up. You all have the meal in common. It's the thing that keeps the fellowship. So a meal is part of the covenant. In every covenant, there are blessings and there are cursings. There are things, there's a list of what you should be doing if you've made covenant that will bring blessing to you. But there's also a list of things that you should not do, because if you do those things, they will bring curses to you. So if you break the covenant, if you're in treaty with somebody, if you are two tribes back whenever and you've made a covenant, or there's three tribes and they all make a covenant together, and the covenant is, the blood covenant is, after they cut, after there's blood, after they eat, they say the blessing is, we're going to help you with your crops. Every spring we're going to go there, we're going to till the fields with you, we're going to plant. And this other group, well, we're going to be there every fall to do the harvest with you guys, make sure you got enough people to do it. And the other group says, well, we're going to be there, in the winter time to make sure that all the houses are warm and kept the right way. And if one doesn't do their job, there are repercussions for that. So let's say spring comes around and the people say, well, we're going to be there in spring aren't there. There's a curse that comes with that. Maybe the next time an enemy comes in, the other two groups don't come to protect you. There's a cursing or there is blessing. This is always in every covenant, there is cursing or blessing. And there is instruction. We know what the word instruction means in Hebrew, Torah. There is always instruction to tell us what to do and what not to do. The instruction doesn't mean we're in covenant. The instruction is given to people who are already in covenant so that they learn how to live. And last but not least, there is always a test of obedience to the covenant. As a matter of fact, there's more than likely multiple tests of obedience to the covenant. We want to make sure. So 3 tribes get together. They said, listen, if you blow your shofar and we hear the shofar, we're going to come running. So what do? Well, you run a test. You blow the shofar one day and you see if they come running. And of course, if they don't come running, what have they just done? Broken the covenant. And there could be consequences for that. So there's always a test for the people that are in the covenant to prove their fidelity, their faith, their allegiance to each other as part of the covenant. Now these are just 4 simple ways. You can see in the picture there's the garden. Adam is made. Adam's name, Adam, means the blood of God. Blood is given. Adam is told to go and eat the communal meal. Eat of all of this stuff. Just don't eat of this. He's given the blessings and the cursings. Eat this, don't eat that. And then they are put under a test, and what happens? They fail. That's a covenant. And you can see in the pictures there, they're pulling the fruit out, and then they're being expelled from the garden. They broke the covenant right in the beginning. But Father was not done. Just because we messed up did not mean that his plan was not about to come to fruition. Here is those same ideas, the cutting, the eating, the blessing, the testing of obedience, given to Abraham. Because after the garden, the next time we see covenant made in this way is with Abraham. And Genesis chapter 12, it's number 5 on your notes. This is what Yah speaks to Abraham about. Now, Abraham is living in an area today that we would call Iraq, Iran, the area of Babylon. And while he's there, Yah says this to him. And Yah said to Abram, go yourself out of your land from your relatives and your father's house to a land that I will show you. And I will make you a great nation and bless you and make your name great. And you shall be a blessing. And I shall bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. What is Father making with Abraham here? A covenant. These are the beginning words of a covenant. What I'm going to do, what you're going to do, and all the other elements are going to come too. They all don't come at once. They come in different stages, but they all come. And here's the best part of it. He says, and in you all the clans, all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. Who does God make covenant with to bless all the nations? Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. That's why we use the term all the time, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Because the covenant was given to Abraham, reiterated to Isaac, reiterated to Jacob, and then lived out in the house of Israel. So there's two promises here. There's going to come a nation from him, and through this seed, all the nations of the earth are going to be blessed. It's how Abba's going to do it. We don't have the details yet, but we will get them as we read on through the scripture. So chapter 12 is the beginning of a covenant. If that's the covenant in the beginning, what is Messiah renewing at Passover? That covenant. That's the covenant he's renewing. Because we've all done some dumb things concerning the covenant. Things that should get us curses, but in Yah's goodness, he's offered us blessings instead. I'm getting ahead of myself. Genesis chapter 14, next couple of verses. Abraham has not received any other information about the covenant yet, though it's already been started in Genesis chapter 12. So if you've already got the oath, you've already got the promise, what else is there? Food. Eating. Eating is a symbol of the covenant. You're fellowshipping. Lot and his family are taken in the attack against Sodom and Gomorrah and the other cities in the area. Abraham takes his little group of people and he goes out and fights against them and brings everybody back and all the material that was stolen in the raids. And on his way back to Sodom, he meets someone. Genesis chapter 12 and verse 1, he meets someone called Melchizedek. Melchizedek is a high priest, a king and a priest of a land or a city called Salem. Today that city is not called Salem. Today that city is called Jerusalem. Yah's peace. And it says in Abraham, and Yah said to Abraham, and Melchizedek, sovereign of Shalem, brought out bread and wine. Now he was priest of the Most High El, and he blessed him and said, blessed be Abraham of the Most High El. El means God, possessor of the heavens and earth, and blessed be the Most High God, who has delivered your enemies into your hand, and he gave him a tenth of all. So we've got the beginning of the oath and the promise in chapter 12, and then what happens with a covenant? We've got the food. We've got bread and wine, the breaking of bread, the fellowship as the continuation of the covenant. And you can see there on that picture, it's sort of a picture of Melchizedek breaking bread with Abraham there. Number 6 on your notes. The story goes on to the next chapter. Chapter 15, verse 5. Abraham is told the specifics about the covenant. Verse 5 says, and he brought him, meaning Abraham, outside, and he said, look now toward the heavens and count the stars if you are able to count them. And he said to him, so are your seed. And he, meaning Abraham, believed in Yah, and Father, Yah, Yah here, reckoned it to him for righteousness. What is this covenant based on? Believing by faith and having righteousness given to you. That's the covenant. That's the covenant we read about in the New Testament too. And we think, oh, this is something different. No, it's the same thing. It's just that Israel sort of messed up as time went on. They thought the Torah was the covenant. The Torah is the instruction of the covenant. The covenant is only given by promise. And so Abraham here receives it. So now he's looking up at the stars. You can see the picture there. He's looking up at the stars. So now the next part of the covenant is here. So now here's blessings. blessings. What's the blessing? You're going to have, yes, lots and lots and lots and lots of children that are going to come from you, but there's something hidden in here that we don't see in the English. This covenant isn't just being made for lots and lots and lots and lots of children. It's being made with one particular child, one particular seed to come. As a matter of fact, the one making covenant with Abraham is the one who would eventually come himself. Look with me at the next point down, Galatians chapter 3, verse 16. The Apostle Paul, or Rabbi Shaul, he explains this. And he says in verse 16, but the promises were spoken to Abraham and to his seed, what we just read. He does not say, and to seeds as of many. Saul's splitting a hair here. He's saying when Yah said this to Abraham, he didn't mean lots and lots of children, though later on he does tell him lots and lots of children. Saul is making the point that this is singular. He was talking about one seed, one son, one child to come. This covenant is based on one child. The covenant is between the child and Abraham, because the child to come is actually the one making the covenant with Abraham and speaking to him right here. That's the covenant. And it goes on to say, but the promises were spoken to Abraham and to his seed. He does not say, and to seeds as of many, but as of one, and to your seed. And who is the seed that Saul realized Abraham was being told about? The Messiah, the Mashiach, Yeshua. He is the seed. So not only is he the seed to come, he's the one making the covenant with Abraham. He's not Yeshua yet, but he is part of Elohim. He is part of the Echad. All things were made by him, through him, and for him. Without him, nothing was made that was made. He is the very word of El. So here's the covenant he's making. The Master mentions this later on in the Gospels, I think around chapter 8, when in speaking to the Pharisees, he tells them, before Abraham was, I am. And they freak out at him. They're like, who are you to call yourself God? Who are you to call yourself El? He's telling them, I'm the one that made the covenant with Abraham in the first place. And you guys are declaring you're Abraham's children, but you're not. Not by your actions. And of course, you can see the picture there. There he is. He's looking at the stars. And yet we now know he's looking towards one particular seed. So the oath is that through Abraham, a nation is going to come. And through that nation, all nations are going to be blessed. How? By a seed. By one to come later on, who we have all, through Abraham, made covenant with. Number 7 on your notes. With every covenant comes a test. And here's the test. Genesis chapter 22. So Abraham's already been given the promise, the oath. He's already been given the food, the fellowship. He's been told specifically what particular seed it is. Now comes the test. And it's actually Abraham faces multiple tests, but here's the big one. Chapter 22 and verse 2. It says, and he said, this is Yah, God speaking to Abraham, take your son now, your only son. And I like the way some of the other versions put it because it really connects with John 3:16. It says, Abraham, take your son, your only begotten son, which is Isaac. Now he had 2 sons, Ishmael, but Ishmael wasn't part of the promise. Isaac was. So he tells Abraham, take your son, your only son, Yitzhak, or Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, that's in Salem, that's the mountain today that we would call the Mount of Olives, and offer him there as an ascending offering on one of the mountains which I command you. Do you know what Abraham was just told to do? Take the son that I promised you, bring him to this mountaintop, build an altar, get all sorts of wood, put your son on top of the altar, and cut him. Put the knife in him and bleed him out. Make him an offering to me. What kind of test is that? That's a tough one. How many of us would have passed that test? That's a tough one. I'm going to plead the fifth on that one. But Abraham does it. We're skipping down some verses to verse 12. He does the whole thing, brings his son. His son's not a little boy. I know in all the pictures we see he's a little boy. He's a grown man. He's a 30-something-year-old man. And he's willing to allow his father to do this. And he lays on the altar, and his father's about to plunge the knife in him. And you can see, I don't have the picture up there. I'll show you in the next one. Actually, let me just show the picture so you guys can see the picture up there. But we're still reading these verses. He's ready to plunge the knife into his son. And verse 12 says, and he, meaning Yah, the angel of Yah, said, do not lay your hand on the boy nor touch him. For now I know that you fear Elohim, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. What was this? A test. Now I see. Now, obviously, does Father know? Does Messiah know? Of course he does. I think this is really for our benefit, for Abraham's benefit, that we all see. But it says, and I see that you have not withheld your son, your only begotten son, from me. Verse 13, and Abraham lifted his eyes and looked, and he saw behind him a ram caught in a bush by its horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up for the ascending offering instead of his son. So he's willing to kill the son, but Father provides a ram in the thicket. And they take the ram and they make that an offering before Abba. And you can see on the picture there, one, of course, is just an artist rendering of Abraham about to plunge the knife into Isaac, and the other, or really slit his throat, and the other is the ram that gets its throat slit. And so what is going on here? This is the cutting of the covenant. This is the blood. We've already had the oath. We've already had the promise. We've already had, here's a test, and now we've got the cutting. We've got the food already. Now we've got the cutting. All of these elements appear in every covenant, except the cutting wasn't Isaac, the son. The cutting was a ram caught in a thicket. What are we missing? The blessings and the cursings. That's the only thing we're missing. Abraham is told that his children are going to inherit the land from the Euphrates River to the Nile River, from the area known as Turkey to Saudi Arabia, an area about 1,500 miles wide, 1,500 miles long. That will one day be the inheritance to the children of Abraham. Wait a minute, if we are in a renewed covenant, that is the covenant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, which is the eternal covenant, what are we going to inherit? Are we going to inherit heaven? Is that the promise that was given to Abraham? No. The promise was the land. And how can we all inherit the land if like all the people have ever believed in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, except for us that have gone before us, are dead? You don't think Father figured that out all the way in the beginning when he gave the promise, how this would happen? So it goes on, verse 15. And he, the messenger of Yah, called to Abraham a second time from the heavens. So he's offered up the goat. And he said, by myself I have sworn. So here's Yah making an oath again. Declares Yah, because you have done this, because you passed the test, because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, that I shall certainly bless you, and I shall certainly increase your seed as the stars of the heavens and the sand which is on the seashore, lots and lots and lots of children, and let your seed possess the gate of their enemies. And in your seed, singular, all nations of the earth shall be blessed. Why? Because you have obeyed my voice. Abraham passed the test. But what hasn't been given yet are the curses and the blessings of a covenant. That doesn't come till the next almost 400 years later with Moses and the giving of what we call the instruction, or we use the word here, Torah. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and all the prophets. And now we realize Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, all the way from the book of Acts to the book of Revelation are also what? Instruction. It's also Torah, Father's instruction to us. The instruction was given to Israel, who are the descendants of Abraham. Not that the Torah is the way you inherit the promises. You inherit it by faith, just like Abraham did. But the Torah becomes the way the people who are inheriting the promises are supposed to live. How they're supposed to interact with one another. How we're supposed to deal with husband and wife. How we're supposed to deal with enemies. How we're supposed to deal with worship. All of that is in the instruction, and that promise, this instruction, isn't just for the people that were there at Mount Sinai. This is for anybody who considers themselves a child of Abraham, i.e., part of the covenant that was given to Abraham, the eternal covenant. That means us. So here is number 9 on your notes. It's many, many years later. And Father has now gotten Israel out of Egypt through the Passover. They're about to enter the land, and Father reviews the blessings and the cursings. This is still part of the covenant promised to Abraham. This is just the next phase of it. And this is the blessings and the cursings. I have called the heavens and the earth as witnesses today against you. I have set before you life and death. So what are the blessings and the cursings of either doing what the instruction says if you live in the covenant, or not doing what the instruction says if you choose not to live in the covenant? It is life, or it is death. I set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Therefore you shall choose life, so that you live, both you and your seed, all your children, to love Yah your Elohim, to obey his voice, and to cling to him, to obey his instructions. For he is your life and the length of your days, to dwell in the land. So what is all of this for? To dwell in the land which Yah swore to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This is not different from the covenant of Genesis 22. This is the next step of the covenant given to Abraham. We look at it so many times in our theological world as that they're two separate different things. They're not the same thing. No, they are the progression of the very same idea. But it's not done yet, because who hasn't come yet, even in the time of Moses? The seed. The seed hasn't gotten here yet, whoever that is. We know who it is, obviously. Number 10 on your notes. So, we have the eating of the covenant, the meal covenant, the testing of obedience, the cutting of the blood, cutting or the shedding of blood and death, and finally the blessings and the cursings. Messiah comes, born of a virgin, goes to Egypt, comes back, is called to do the thing that he's been ordained to do. He tells us, before Abraham was, I am. Who made the covenant with Abraham? Elohim did. Elohim is plural. Father and Son made the covenant with Abraham. Who's the seed that was promised to Abraham? The Son. Father's only begotten Son. So now all of a sudden you realize, wait a minute, that whole story of Isaac is really important. So if Yah, God, made covenant with Abraham, and Abraham had to receive an oath, he had to eat a meal, he had to, he got the promises given to him, he believes it by faith, he has a test of obedience, his children get the blessings and the cursings. If he had to do all of that to do his part of the covenant, then what does the other party of the covenant have to do? The same thing. The one you are in covenant with has to go through all the same things you do. Why? Because you are echad. One. Marriage. You are together. So does Messiah fulfill the covenant the way Abraham fulfilled his part of the covenant? Yes, absolutely. Here's just a couple of things. The eating the meal of the covenant. Luke chapter 22, on the night of Passover. And taking the bread, giving thanks, he broke it and gave it to them, saying, "This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." Likewise, afterward, the cup also, saying, "This cup is the renewed covenant in which my blood, which is shed for you." So what are they doing on that night? They are eating and drinking the meal which represents the covenant. Which covenant? Covenant made with Abraham all the way back when. Now the other party, the party of the second part, is doing their thing. And it's still eating. It's still fellowship. There is a test of obedience. Matthew chapter 26. The Messiah, prior to the crucifixion, the night after the few hours after he says the words we just read, praying in Gethsemane with the disciples, tells them to sit there and pray. He goes off a little bit further and he begins to pray to Father. He knows what's coming. What's coming? Caiaphas and Annas and the Herodians and Rome and the beatings and the whipping and the flogging and the being nailed to the cross and the embarrassment and the pain and the torture. He knows all of that is coming. What is this? It's a test. It's a test. And you can either pass the test or we can fail the test. Israel, our spiritual ancestors, failed the test over and over and over and over and over. But Yah didn't give up. This wasn't about us just passing the test. It was about him. And he does. He says, and going forward a little while, he fell on his face and he prayed, saying, "Oh, my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me." Meaning the cup, meaning all the stuff that's about to occur. The Messiah is actually asking, Father, can we not do this? Is there any other way of not doing this? Go back to the original covenant. What did Isaac do? He allowed his father to put him on the altar. And this is what Messiah is going to do as well. He says, "Yet not as I desire, but as you desire." We know it probably in the King James, "Not my will, but your will be done." This is the test. Does he pass the test? Thankfully, yes. But with every covenant, not only is there the eating, not only is there the test, there must be the cutting. There must be the blood. There must be the ram caught in the thicket. John chapter 19, verse 34, the Messiah is hanging on the cross. He's already given up his spirit. And one of the soldiers, because it should have never happened within a 6-hour period. Normally when you die on the cross, it could take days. It's days of torture between asphyxiation and the pain and just the horrific beatings you get before you even get there. But he dies within 6 hours. So to make sure he's dead, one of the soldiers pierced his side with a spear, and instantly blood and water came out. That's the cutting of the covenant. So we've got all parts of the covenant here. We've got it all. We got the eating, we got the test of obedience, we've got now the cutting of the covenant. What's left? Blessings and cursings. John chapter 5, verse 24, the master says, "Truly, truly, I say to you, he who hears my word and believes in him who sent me possesses everlasting life and does not come into judgment, but has passed from death into life." What's the blessings and the curses? The same ones given to Moses. It's either life or it's death, based upon whether you obey the instruction. It's life or it's death. Except now we've got a better idea that we can see the whole story. How is Father going to give a land that's 1,500 miles wide, 1,500 miles long, or 1,500 miles square, When today Israel's this little itty bitty nothing nation. Look at the map of the Middle East. It's this little bitty nothing, and everything else is there. But that everything else, Father promised to the children of Abraham. How is he going to get all of his children when all of his children, all the seed of Abraham that has ever believed, whether it's us, people that came before us, all the way back to the day of Moses, where are they? Or where are their bodies? In the grave. How is he going to get them there? Because that's what the promise was. How is he going to bless all nations to invite them into this promise? Life. Life from the dead. I know it's crazy. I know it sounds nuts the first time you hear it. But when you understand what this covenant's about and you realize who our God actually is, you realize this was the plan all along. This is how he gets all of us into the land, through resurrection. All of us. And there are those of us that have chosen life. There are many who have chosen death, to not follow or be part of the covenant. Chapter 14 of the same book, verse 23, Messiah answered him, "If anyone loves me, he shall guard my word," meaning he shall keep my commandments. "And my Father shall love him, and we shall come to him and make our stay with him. He who does not love me does not keep my commandments. And the word which you hear is not mine, but the Father who sent me." So what's one of the blessings and curse? Life, eternal, or death, eternal. But there's another blessing. If you love him and you keep the commandments, he will make his abode where? With us, here, now, guiding us along. Or the curse is you don't, and he won't. Blessing and curse. All the elements here in the story, that is the covenant, the eternal covenant given to Abraham. So why does Messiah call it the renewed covenant? Why, when we read it in the New Testament, New Covenant, whatever word you want to use, why do we say new when it's actually renewed? And if it is renewed, why does it have to be renewed? Because the children to whom the promises were given messed up so bad. They forgot this was about a covenant with Abraham, and they thought it was a covenant with the Torah. They thought it was about doing things religiously to make you right before God. When in the beginning, Father said, no, you're right like Abraham is, because he believed. Not because he did anything, just because he believed. And then after he believed, he did things. So Father had to remind us all over again. Renew the whole thing. It's still the same covenant. It's not something different, even though I know that's what we're taught. We're taught, well, that's old and that's done away with and it has nothing to do with us. This is brand new. Well, then if that's the truth, then you're not a child of Abraham. If you're in some other covenant, because there's only one everlasting covenant. Promises made, promises kept. And this one covenant plays itself out throughout all history, and we are still part of it today. Number 11 on your notes, the last slide for today. This was our opening verse. You say, what does all this have to do with baptism? Everything. It's got everything to do with baptism. You know how we work here. We go around the mountain 3 or 4 times. You're like, oh, what's he talking about? What's he talking about? And at the end, you're like, oh, okay, I get it. Get ready for the, oh, okay, I get it moment. This has everything to do with a baptism, a mikvah, an immersion, whatever you want to call it. Here's Romans chapter 6. Not just the verse we read, but a few verses before and a few verses after. Saul, this is after the resurrection. This is Rabbi Shaul, the Apostle Paul. He says, what then shall we say? Shall we continue in sin to let favor increase? The issue here is, We have all been so bad. We've all broken Father's instructions so badly that it takes a lot of love and grace because we've been so bad to bring us in. Everybody's with that? Everybody has got that? All right, so once we come in, if we've gotten that much grace since we've come in, do we keep doing bad stuff to get more grace? Is that how it's supposed to work? What's that old saying? If a little medicine is good, a lot of medicine is better until you OD on it. It's not better anymore. He's saying if we sin, if we break his commandments, and we did it a lot, and his grace is so magnificent, it found me where I was in the gutter. It found me where I was in my marriage. It found me where I was in the military. It found me where I was waging war around the world. It found me where I was in poverty. It found me where I was in the club. It found me wherever I happened to be, in all the terrible things I did that I felt terrible for. His grace was bigger than that. So now, since I disobeyed so much to get so much grace, do I keep disobeying to get more? No. I start obeying. It's as simple as that, guys. That's what he's saying. What shall we say then? Shall we continue to sin, which is transgressing Father's law, to let favor increase? Unless he answers it, he says, no, let it not be. How shall we who died to sin still live in it? Wait a minute. What did we do? We have died to sin. Well, Pastor, you don't know how bad I am. I do all sorts of crazy stuff throughout the week. Yeah, I get that. I do that too. We all make mistakes. How many of you are still doing the things you did when Yah found you? I hope not. You're in trouble. How many of you want to still do those things? I don't. I don't want to go back to that. That has died in me. Not saying I'm perfect. We're not. We make all sorts of mistakes. Ask my wife. We make all sorts of mistakes. But that stuff is dead to me. That's what he's referring to. How shall we who have died to sin still live in it? Or do you not know that as many of us as were immersed? So there we go. As many of us as were what? Baptized. As many of us as were mikvahd. As many of us as were mikvahd into Messiah, Yeshua, were immersed into his death. Wait a minute. You're telling me that the ceremony, this little thing we're going to do, the mikvah, is actually a part of us playing out the covenant. That just as he died and he goes into the ground, thankfully we don't have to do that, though we all will. This is the forerunner of that. But we do it in symbolism, not by going and laying down in dirt. We do it by laying down in water. And we symbolize his death. We're telling friends, neighbors, the world, we are, in doing this, being tested as to whether you will obey or not. When you go into that water, are you saying, I died, all that other stuff, and now I want to live to him? That's what Saul is saying here. For if we have come to be grown together in the likeness of his death, we shall be also of the resurrection. So this is about, okay, he forgave me my sin. I'm going to go in the water. I'm going to live differently after that. That's the first part of it. The next part of it is that all of us, every single one of us, if Messiah doesn't return before that, we are all going to do this thing all over again, except next time it's not in the water. Next time it is in the ground. And if you have the faith to believe now to go down in the water and die and come back up in new life, you also have faith to lay your head down in death for the brain to stop and the heart to stop and the spirit to return to the one who gave it, and close your eyes on this side of eternity and know that because he lives, you will live also. Because of the covenant made with Abraham. You see how all of this is really just the same story? It's all one big story. For if we have come to grow together in the likeness of him, so that the body of sin might be rendered powerless to serve sin no longer. For he who has died has been made right from sin. And if we died with Messiah, we believe that we shall also live with him, knowing that Messiah, having been raised from the dead, dies no more. Death no longer rules over him. There's the promise. The promise. So all of that seed who now has life, both out of the water to live it here, and then out of the grave to live it where? In heaven or in the land? The promise is the land. Yes, New Jerusalem and all the rest of that, but the promise is the land. And if we die with Messiah, we believe that we shall also live with him, knowing that Messiah, having been raised from the dead, dies no more. Death no longer rules over him. That's the promise. For in that he died once to sin for all. In that he lives to Elohim. So you also reckon yourselves. Think of yourselves. This is the thinking when you go into the water and when you come out. This is our daily thinking. Reckon, think to yourselves to be dead indeed to sin, to rebellion against what Father's instruction is. So if we don't want to rebel against Father's instruction is, what's the opposite side of that? I want to know what Father's instruction is. I want to learn how to do it to the best of my ability. I want to know what instruction applies to me, what instruction applies to my wife, what instruction applies to my boss, what instruction applies to the employee. I want to know all of those things. I want those things. I don't want to sin anymore. I want to do them. That's the difference. And I think like that, or we should think like that. But alive to Elohim in Messiah Yeshua, our master. Last verse for today. If, after all of this, you still do not realize this is all one story, one continuous story. Galatians chapter 3, verse 27. For as many of you as were immersed, baptized, mikvahd, into Messiah have put on Messiah. I didn't even talk about that. One of the other things you get in a covenant is you normally exchange something, clothing. Sometimes armies would exchange weapons. You sometimes even exchange children. There were times where they exchanged kids, so you took care of theirs, they took care of yours. In this covenant, we also get clothing. Adam and the woman lost their original clothing, and they made covenant with somebody else. Why? Because they ate of the fruit they weren't supposed to. They made covenant, and they got brand new clothes. Remember the first Fruit of Loom underwear? We are going to be reclothed, I think, with whatever it was that they lost way back when. And it's spoken of as white robes, which I don't think that even comes close to what we're going to be clothed with. There is neither Jew nor Greek. There is neither slave nor free. There is neither male nor female. For you are all one in Messiah Yeshua. And if you are of Messiah, listen, if you have gone down in the water, believing in the death and resurrection of Messiah, mimicking it through the water, to one day live it out in our actual life, if you've done that, you are part of the covenant given to Abraham as he lived it out, to the house of Israel as they tried to live it out and failed, to Messiah who came and lived it out perfectly. Now, it's our turn. Now it's your turn. Because we also still eat. This is the bread. This is the cup. Do this as often as you eat, in remembrance of me. There's still a blessing and a cursing. Obey, disobey. There's still tests every day. This is one. But there's still tests every single day. We're still living this out, walking the way of the covenant. And if you are of Messiah, then you are the seed of Abraham, and heirs of what was promised to Abraham, heirs according to the promise of the eternal covenant made between our God and Father Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, bought and paid for by Messiah, the one who made the covenant in the first place. That is Abba's word for you guys for this morning. All right, so now we've all got an idea here of what's about to happen. Now, are some of us already walking in newness of life? Wonderful, yes, amen. But if there's an opportunity for water, we need to take the opportunity and follow. Be baptized. Be mikvahed. It's a testimony to the world of what is already going on the inside. So in just a moment, we're going to have our candidates come on up. We're going to take a break just for a second. Guys, hang out with us. Don't go anywhere. If you want to watch this, it's going to be broadcast out there. So if you just give us a second, I think we're going to have some music. We're going to play a song. We just got to get changed real quick. If you haven't gotten changed into your robes, obviously do it now. If so, if you guys want to come and sit up in the front row, that would be awesome. Give us about 60 seconds and we'll be right back. In the meantime, guys, hold on. We'll see you in just a moment.